Hi, this is Ted at Valley of the Dolly. Today I want to talk with you about what I consider to be the 11 most desirable neighborhoods for expats to live in Lisbon. Today on Valley of the Dolly. So we're going to take this map, which is of Lisbon, and it's divided into the municipal subdivisions, which there are 24 of them, and we're going to take those ones that are really listed in purple, and we're going to exclude it really for this conversation. Why are we taking those out? Because for the most part, expats don't choose to live in those districts. And I'm sure I may receive comments from people who say that they really love that district or they're living there now. And that's absolutely true. But just I think from volume, you're going to find that most expats live along the waterfronts. And those are the districts that you're going to find there in green, yellow, orange, or blue, or red there. And we're going to put them into 4 different categories. We're either going to say that we love it, or I love it, that you would rent it, that you would list it, or that you would choose it as some place that you would prefer to only really visit. And the first one we're going to talk about is Alfama. There's a couple reasons we're taking this first. Alfama was a neighborhood in Lisbon that was not destroyed by the earthquake of 1755. So this is a place that really has all of that wonderful, deep, rich charm that you've come to Lisbon to experience. And because of that, it's located right above where all of the people come out of the cruise ships and they migrate up the hillside to visit Alfama. And that's why you're going to find, if you're in Alfama, it is full of tourists. There are beautiful locations to viewpoints from there. There's also wonderful restaurants. There are wonderful places to stay in Alfama. But it is a real tourist mecca. And that's why when I say, is it a buy, a rent, a visit? It's definitely, to me, it's definitely a visit. Because you're going to find if you're going to live there that there are limitations to that location that make it less desirable for modern life. So for example, there is no real big subway train or line that runs through the predominant portion of Alfama. You do have the trams that run up and down, but simply getting to a major grocery store, a major department store, shopping area, all those things are not really included inside of Alfama. And I think at first, the wonderful charm is very much of a winner, but I think if you're going to live there, I think practicality begins to win out and you begin to look for something else. The second one we're going to talk about is Misericordia, and I'm probably butchering the name here again, but this really is an area that I don't commonly use that when I'm talking about the neighborhoods that are reflected inside of this. So Misericordia is a district that includes Principal Real, Barrio Alto, and parts of Xadu. Now, the reason I pick this particular area next is because I think Principal Real is one of the biggest hotspots where you'll find a lot of expats living. And I think for many expats, including myself, it is the first place you choose to live when you get to Portugal. And there are reasons for that. One, it is very close to the center of everything. You are between the Amaré shopping mall, which I believe is the oldest indoor enclosed shopping mall in Lisbon, and Avenue de Liberdade down below it, which is about 10 stories down if you're going to walk down to that level. But Principal Real is very close to everything, and yet it's not heavily touristed. You do have the Ratu subway station, so you do have access to the subway to take you out through the rest of the city. There are trams that run through the city and bus lines as well in that area, but it also has a lot of wonderful restaurants. It has a park in Principal Real. It has a botanical garden up there. There are a lot of things that make day-to-day living accessible and fun. There are athletic clubs up there. You can play tennis up there. Day-to-day, there's also newer units that have parking. I would also venture to say that unless you go out by the mall or a couple other locations, there aren't a lot of subterranean parking in Principal Real. So it's really something you've got to, if you're coming from a country where you brought a car even from the US, it is something that you'll want to consider, because when you look inside Principal Real, you really want to make sure if you have a car that you can find some place to park it. The next one we're going to talk about is Baixa. Baixa is a wonderful neighborhood located right down in the heart of it all. Baixa is that area of town that a lot of people think of. because, and a lot of people refer to Baisha and Shadu together in the same breath. And in the 18th century rebuild that happened right after the 1755 earthquake, Baisha became really an example of the most modern urban plan. Baisha became really a stellar landmark after the earthquake because it was the best in civic development right at that point. And that includes not just anti-earthquake, but also improved sanitary conditions that were possible because of this rebuild. So it was really a technical marvel at the time that it was redone. And there are a lot of things that you can do inside of there. There's a lot of people, when they go into this area of town in Baisha, they'll want to do the Santa Justa elevators. And that was opened in 1902. And that really takes you from Baisha up to Shadu. There's also Rocio Square. There's Rua Augusta, which has a lot of the shopping on it right there. You also have the Moody Design and Fashion Museum, that's MUDE. And that is one of the places that I've really wanted to visit because it's recently been under renovation and it looks like it has just reopened with a special exhibit there. But I think that would be a lot of fun to go to. I've also been to the Money Museum. And there is a lot of benefits to living, or to being in that area, I should say. Baisha has great access to parking. It also has great access to the train coming in up the coast from Cascais. It has wonderful subway stops that are located in there. It has trams coming through there. It's very, very accessible. And because it's so accessible and it's located right down in the second heart of the tourist neighborhoods after Alfama, you're going to find that there are a lot of tourists. So I think living there day to day becomes more of a challenge because you are really swarmed with all the tourists that are coming through there. That's why when I talk about Baisha, I usually say it's under the listed category, because if you got there and you were there for a few months, all of these, if you got there, for example, in the winter, and now you're living there through the high season where there's so many tourists in the summer, you're really possibly thinking you want to get out of there as fast as you can. Just because it's a little bit overwhelming after a while. So I did mention Baisha, and what is mentioning Baisha without mentioning Shadu? So I love that area. I think it's wonderful. And a lot of people say, what's the difference? Well, the elevation is kind of different. Higher elevation, and there's still a lot of great shopping. There's a lot of things to see up in that area. It has the oldest bookstore in the world called Bertrand, which was founded by two French brothers in 1732, which even predates the earthquake. It has a famous cafe called A Brasileria. It has cathedrals and different elements that go back to the 1400s, like the Convento do Carmo. This was a 14th century cathedral where the roof caved in during the earthquake of 1755, and they have never replaced that. So it's really a stark reminder of what happened during the earthquake, but it's really incredible to see if you're in that district. You also have the National Museum of Contemporary Art. I really loved visiting that museum, and it's really quite an extensive museum. And there are a number of restaurants that I love down in that area that I go to over and over again. And again, there are still a lot of other wonderful hotels. There are wonderful restaurants and coffee houses inside of there. But when I look at this overall, I list this as a listed location. So for Shadu, I say listed. Why? Because I think if you're down here in the middle of the action again, it is a lot. And I think for a short-term rental, you may really, really enjoy it. I think if you're there for a couple months, maybe 3-6 months even, it may be wonderful. Especially during that first honeymoon period where you don't have a car, don't feel any need for one, where you're exploring the city, where you want to be able to get in and out of the subway really easily, but you're not looking for access to things like IKEA or home improvement or large department stores or grocery stores. You're comfortable living inside of that much more touristed area, and then I think it's wonderful. But if you're looking after that, you're probably going to say, I'm going to list it and I'm going to move on to another neighborhood out of that kind of melee that's down there. The next one we're going to talk about is Barrio Alto. Barrio Alto, I think for a lot of people, they're going to refer to this kind of as the party place. And it is true that there are just a lot of nightclubs there. And yes, they're not scattered throughout the entire district, but they are congregated in a couple of streets. And I think if you're going to rent any or buy anywhere close to that, that is really something you want to give serious thought and consideration to. You can take the Gloria funicular, and that was put in 1885. That funicular will take you from Avenue de Libertad up to Barrio Alto. The alternative you can use is if you're down in Baixashadu, you can get off at the subway station there. You can take this incredibly steep escalator. It's wonderful. It'll take you up into Shadu, and it will give you access right there to Barrio Alto from that location there. So you have a number of ways of getting around. You can go back down to that blue and green lines on the subway there. You can enjoy a lot of the other wonderful things that you're going to find up in that neighborhood, not just the nightlife. My personal take on Barrio Alto is listed. I think, again, it's one of the locations where I've had friends who have lived down there initially, and after 3 or 6 months or somewhat longer, they were in an Airbnb, whatever the case may be, they chose to move out of that area just because it is heavily touristed and there are. The next one we're going to talk about is a district called Santo Antonio, and this includes the area called Avenue de Libertad. Avenue de Libertad to me is what I kind of lovingly refer to as the Rodeo Drive of Lisbon. It's an absolutely gorgeous boulevard. It is lined with super high-end shops. There are recently remodeled condos that have full service with parking and beautiful units there. Some have been restored to the original conditions. Some are fully modern inside. Absolutely gorgeous. You're down in this kind of between the hills on either side. So you have Arroyos on one side with the hills, and then you have Barrio Alto and Principal Real kind of on the other side going up there. But what it has are really beautiful, expensive apartments. It has wonderful access to the subway system there. It has great access to public parking there and great access to Baixashadu for other shopping. It also, right above Marquês de Pombal, also includes the Lisbon Botanical Gardens. So it is an absolutely gorgeous location right there in the middle of in the heart of the city. Absolutely wonderful place to be. And for that, I would say, yeah, I love it if you can afford it. And I'd love to be able to afford it. And the next one we're going to talk about is Campo de Rique. Campo de Rique is a neighborhood that I absolutely love. It is this wonderful blend of, to me, and a lot of these references aren't going to mean anything to anybody who's not from California, for example, where I would say it's kind of like Santa Monica or above around Montana. These are neighborhoods that are kind of self-contained. They have wonderful areas of shopping. They're not really big enclosed malls. They may have a food court, like a large kind of diverse food scene inside of them. They have wonderful local stores. You can walk around there forever. You have beautiful tree-lined streets. A lot of families from France choose this area for understandable reasons. It's really a gorgeous area of the city. The negatives, of course, kind of center more along mobility because it doesn't really sit on the subway line now. It is kind of, goes into Amaresh at some point there. And Amaresh, if you walk down from Amaresh, you can get to Ratu Station, but it's not, I have not found this area to have the parking, especially underground public parking, to have the subway. It is supposed to get subway. It is on the plans to include this area of town on the subway, but right now it doesn't have that. So I think there are a number of things that make it more difficult to select it as a place to live. But I think especially if you have kids, it's an easy thing to say, hey, rent here, especially at first. And if you aren't inclined to rent there, then I would definitely say visit it. But I'm going to put this one down as a rented location. And also with Campo de Orique, you do have the trams. They end here for the 25 and the 28. So again, there is access, but the trams are not as fast as the subway, for example. You can also see the aqueducts, and the aqueducts survived the earthquake of 1755, and they are a primary source of water that flows into Lisbon. It's an absolutely gorgeous structure that runs 36 miles, and it goes into an area in Lisbon by the Ratu station at Amarish Park called the Water Museum, and it is a wonderful, beautiful place to go see one of the exhibits. And it is absolutely stunning. And that's kind of at one end of Campo de Orique. So Campo de Orique has a lot to offer. And if you get over, I think more by the Amarish Mall, you're going to find more parking, some new developments that were put in over there. So that differs from what I think of the traditional area of Campo de Orique. Next on our list is Estrella. I love this neighborhood. Estrella Park is one of my absolute favorite parks. There are 2 coffee kiosks inside of there. It's a huge, gorgeous park right there in the middle of the city. It's a great place to meet your friends, to have some coffee, to spend an afternoon. Wonderful place. Like Campo de Orique, it doesn't really have a stop on the subway line at this point, and it's not as accessible there. The other thing I find with this neighborhood is it really doesn't have a lot in the way of additional parking. There is a cathedral there that I guess has additional public parking, but for the most part, I find that parking is not at the level you're going to find in a number of the other districts of the city. But I will say a lot of gorgeous apartments there, a lot of really fascinating people live in that area, and it also includes where Parliament is there. So it has the Estrella Basilica, it has embassies for Austria, for Bulgaria, for Canada, for China, for Finland, for Indonesia, for Ireland, for Luxembourg, for the Netherlands, Romania, Sweden, and the United Kingdom. So there are a lot of things that are going on in that district, and there are a lot of wonderful little coffee houses, places I love to explore inside of there. And for that, because I find that Estrella is a lot like Campo de Orique in those areas, I find it's a place where I might rent there, especially at first. And if I found that the lack of mobility options, or I got tired of paying so much for Uber to get me to and from events or meetings with family and friends, and it became prohibitively expensive, I might look at another area. But I do find that it is an absolutely gorgeous part of the city. The next one on our list is Belém, and I'm also including Ajuda with this because these are 2 districts over really on the other side of the bridge from downtown. And Alcantara I didn't put on this list because it is right under the flight path and right under the bridge, which tend to be quite loud. But when you get over into Ajuda and Belém, you're getting into Belém are much more bucolic neighborhoods, really beautiful, gorgeous neighborhoods. They have Pastiche Belém, which is one of the original places to get the pastel de nata, which is an egg custard. You find a lot of tourists in there. Why are they there? Well, they're there for the Naval Museum. They're there for the MAC CCB Museum, the Coach Museum, the MAT Museum, the Palace National of Belém, which is the presidential palace. They're there for the Monastery of Geronimo. They're there for the Tagus Power Station, the Monument to the Discovery, and the Electricity Museum. I mean, there's so much to do in this area. A lot of people who live down by Estrella, or if you get on the other side, especially further away on the other side past Arroyos or in those neighborhoods over there, they tend to kind of discount going all the way. They see Belém or Ajuda as too far out of the city center for them to traverse over to on any given regular basis. But I personally find that this is an absolutely incredible area of the city, absolutely gorgeous. And if you get away from that heavily touristed area down at the base of the hill, much like Principal Real, tourists don't go up very far there. There are a lot of great restaurants. It's very accessible if you are by tram in that area. The train has stops coming from Cascais at Belém, also in the Ajuda area. So you are able to access it by train, not by subway. And you're also able to access it by tram and by bus. It doesn't have quite, the access that you would have if you were in Principal Real or not necessarily Principal Real. I would say it's equivalent to that. I would say it doesn't have quite the access if you're down on Avenue de Libertad or in Baixixado and a few other areas of town that are really heavy into public transit. And so for those two, I would definitely say that Belém and Ajuda are kind of a love it there for me, I think. Another one that I put down as a love it is Arroyos. And this is a district that's really located on the opposite side of Avenue de Libertad from Barrio Alto and Principal Real. The reason I put this one down is because it's kind of a hidden gem. Now, going back to 2019, it was on Time Out's list as the hottest neighborhood in Lisbon, and there are reasons why they did that, because renovations were in full swing in that district at the time, and it really was needed there. There were a lot of rundown buildings that, especially apartments and condo buildings, that really needed renovation. And you're going to find so many new units have opened up, and if you go into the Campo dos Matrias, the beautiful park there, which is filled with chickens and ducks, there is a great underground parking there. There is the German Embassy and the German Cultural Center right there off of there. There's a number of other beautiful parks up there. And this is an area that's probably 10 stories above Avenue de Libertad, but you have access down to Martin Muniz to the subway down there, access down by Avenue Libertad to the subway over there, two completely different lines. You have a number of grocery stores up there. You actually have access to clothing stores and a number of other things not very far away up on that plateau. So you're not really left out of what's happening there. It's very close to everything, and yet it is a hot spot for locals who have loved it all their lives, and for expats who have really found the wonders of it. And it's a great place if you have dogs as well, I think. Another one that I put down as a love it, and I think I might get some blowback on this, and I would understand, but hear me out. And this is Parque Nações, and there's a reason why I listed this as a love it. This is another neighborhood that's commonly overlooked because it tends to be up on the opposite side of Lisbon from Belém. It is located up closer to the airport. The subway stop or train stop there is called Orient. It's a beautiful architectural wonder of a train station. And the reason I put this there is because in 1990, this was really quite an industrial area for Portugal. But by 1998, it became the site of the Lisbon World Exhibition. And with it came a huge reimagining of what modern Lisbon could encompass. So you're in this gorgeous district of the city with huge wide boulevards, with brand new apartments, with lots of parking, with easy access to the subway and the train to get you into the airport, to quickly get you into downtown. It has wonderful services out there. If you're working full-time, you may very likely find that your company has centered its offices out in that area of town as well. It also has the Lisbon Aquarium, the Oceanarium it's called. It has the Vasco da Gama Bridge, which was the longest bridge in the European Union at the time it was constructed. So there is a lot going on in there, and it's commonly, I think, overlooked. So there are a number of neighborhoods that I have not included in this discussion, and that's the city of Cascais and Sintra, for example. And I did not include those because, one, they're separate cities, and I didn't include that area across the bridge here. And you can see it here, that's showing on the map here. And the reason I didn't include that area is because that, again, I think is a conversation for another day. There are a lot of wonderful areas out there, and it shouldn't be overlooked, especially if you're looking for a more suburban location. You still have access to the city by either by boat coming across on the ferries that come across every day on a regular basis. So if you're working there, you can come. If you're working in the city, you can quickly come across there, or you can take the train under the bridge. That will take you right into the city. So there are a number of different reasons why somebody may choose, and I have friends who live out there. It's absolutely wonderful. But for the discussions we had today, I really focused on those neighborhoods that are located right inside of Lisbon. So I'm really super eager to hear what your thoughts are, and we'll talk again soon. This is Ted at Valley of the Dolly. If you like this video, please hit the like and subscribe button. Thank you.